With the announcement of NVIDIA's and AMD's new GPUs, a lot of people are starting to upgrade their monitors to take advantage of high refresh rate gaming. So if you guys clicked on this video, then that means you're ready to ascend from 60 Hz gaming. First of all, congratulations. I know this is a big step for you. I can say with confidence, you're gonna love high refresh rate gaming. With that said, I have personally purchased 6 of the highest rated and cheap budget gaming monitors from Amazon under $200 that I'll be covering in this video. So all these monitors have been purchased with my own money. No company has sent anything to get featured in this video. In fact, I made sure not to include any ads or sponsors in this video to waste any of your time, because I'm sure you're also short on time and you're shopping around to find the best monitor as soon as possible so you can game on. So in this video, I'm going to be going over the pros and cons of each monitor that I've selected. I'm also going to give you a full summary at the end of the video, kind of recapping the entire video, and also list the monitors from the best to worst to give you guys a much better idea on which monitor works best for you. So yeah, with that said, let's begin. Kicking off the video is the Sceptre E248B, which is one of the 265 Hz monitors in this list. This is a 24-inch display with a 165 Hz refresh rate and a 1 millisecond response time that goes for $180. If you have seen my previous budget gaming monitors under $200, then this monitor might seem familiar. This is the newer version of that same monitor, which got released in May 2020. The biggest difference between the previous one is the panel. It has been upgraded with an IPS panel with a much better color reproduction and viewing angles, which we'll get into later. The design has also been slightly changed. It has a new sturdier base with an opening in the center to help with routing the cables if you like, and the stand is actually built really well. I haven't experienced a ton of play. The stand doesn't offer much of adjustability other than the normal amount of tilt, but that's to be expected for a display of this price point. The monitor is also basic compatible, so you can ditch the stand altogether and mount it to your wall or desk. I have to say, one of the things I really like about this monitor are those bezels. Extremely thin, making this a great choice for a multi-monitor setup. One of the things that hasn't changed from previous Sceptre monitors are the menu buttons. They are still located in the back, which is frustrating at times when trying to access the menu. The fact that they have 5 buttons makes it that much more difficult to use. I was pleased to find out the monitor has a nice selection of ports. It looks like they added an extra HDMI port compared to the previous version. However, all 3 HDMI ports will only support up to 144 Hz refresh rate, while the display port is the only one that supports up to 165, and you can achieve this with the included DisplayPort cable. Just make sure to enable it once you set up your monitor. Believe it or not, a lot of people out there assume their monitor comes out of the box with the highest refresh rate already enabled, when that is not the case. Most monitors are shipped with the 60 Hz refresh rate by default. So once you have everything set up, right-click on your desktop and go to the display settings. Scroll down to the advanced display settings, select the monitor you wish to change, and then click on the display adapter properties for whichever display you want to change. You will then get this little window pop up right after. You're going to want to click on the monitor tab up top and select the refresh rate you want the monitor to run at, and then hit apply. The monitor also comes with built-in speakers, but they are the worst sounding speakers I have ever heard in my life. They are so low, even at max volume, that you can't hear anything. So yeah, that is the quality of the speakers on this monitor. They wrote on the website that they deliver office level audio, which is far from the truth. It's actually almost comical that they even included them. I wouldn't even listen to porn on these speakers. Use your headphones. If no one's home, blast the speakers, but whatever you do, do not use the built-in speakers on this monitor. As I mentioned earlier, it's not equipped with an IPS display, so the colors are more vibrant and you get much better viewing angles compared to a TN panel. There isn't much distortion horizontally, but you will experience some color shifting vertically. After all, they are using a cheap IPS panel to save money. Speaking of cheap panels, I've noticed a lot of backlight bleed on this particular model. We got some bleeding on the bottom right corner, the top left corner, with majority of the bleed coming from the middle left side, which is noticeable in the dark. To check the color accuracy and peak brightness, I always use the Spider X tool from Data Color for all of my monitor tests. Despite being an IPS panel, which usually offers the best color reproduction compared to other panels, this one in particular does not have an accurate color reproduction, which was surprising, scoring only 96% of sRGB color space and 74% of Adobe RGB. So I wouldn't recommend doing any professional color sensitive work on this display. It also scored 343 nits of peak brightness. However, going anything over 55% brightness on this panel starts to wash out a lot of the colors, so I recommend staying under 55%. And finally, the ghosting test. I do this test on every monitor to find out if the monitor displays any ghosting or corona artifacts. Ghosting is a trailing motion artifact caused by slow response times. Basically, the objects or pictures leave a trail behind as you move around. And I was actually happy to find out that the monitor didn't experience any ghosting or corona artifacts. Overall, the Sceptre monitor offers a bunch of nice features that make it a solid purchase for the price of $180. A very fast panel with no ghosting, an upgraded IPS panel with great viewing angles, we got basic compatibility, and a nice selection of ports packed inside a well-built and sturdy chassis with really thin bezels. However, with that said, there are plenty of cons that might be a deal breaker to you, like the noticeable backlight bleed, bad color accuracy, inconvenient menu button locations, and the embarrassing built-in speakers. If you're willing to look past all of that in order to experience 165 Hz gaming, then this might be the best monitor for you. Next up is one of the cheapest curved monitors on the list. This is the Pixio PXC243, a 24-inch curved monitor with a 144 Hz refresh rate that goes for only $160. Don't expect an IPS panel for this price point either. However, it does have a VA panel, which is still better than TN. VA panels offer higher contrast ratios, better viewing angles, and overall better color reproduction than TN panels while having slightly slower response times. This one in particular doesn't state the response time, but I'm going to guess anywhere between 3 to 5 milliseconds judging by the amount of ghosting present. There is a lot of ghosting, which is really common on most VA panels, and judging by the price of this monitor, it's to be expected. So the Pixio has a pretty bulky design, if I'm being honest. We have a really thick chin and a fairly large base. I'm more of a minimalist myself, so I prefer thinner, less obtrusive stands, but the good thing is it is basic compatible, so that's an option as well. You get the usual amount of tilt, and overall I would say it's built really well. One thing I would have loved to see was a cutout in the neck piece, or maybe even a small add-on clip to help with cable management. Nothing too crazy, but oh well, you're just gonna have to use some Velcro straps to tidy up the wires. Accessing the menu is extremely convenient with the single joystick in the back. Why can't all manufacturers adopt this method? Is it too much to ask for? For connectivity, the monitor comes with one of each. A DisplayPort cable of pushing 144 Hz with the included DisplayPort cable, but you also get an HDMI 1.4 and DVI port. But sadly, those won't get you 144 Hz. The HDMI can only get you 120, while the DVI is capped at 60 Hz, which is a bit disappointing. At least they didn't add any cheap speakers to the monitor like Sceptre did. Having a VA panel means the viewing angles are better than TN, however it doesn't quite compare to IPS. I didn't notice a lot of color distortion horizontally, however vertically is a different story. There is a good amount of color shifting, meaning I wouldn't recommend stacking this monitor on the top. Since it is a curved panel, it would make more sense side to side if you're going with a multi-monitor setup anyways. VA panels also tend to have less backlight bleed compared to IPS, and this seems to check out for this monitor. So if you're someone that enjoys playing dark games or watching movies with dark scenes, then VA panels are probably your best friend. Where VA panels don't quite shine is in color accuracy, scoring a little less than the previous IPS panel on the list with a 94% of sRGB coverage and 72% of Adobe RGB. No surprise here. This monitor is in a tricky spot because of its price. You're definitely giving up a lot in order to save the most money, especially considering you can pick up a refurbished one for as low as 140 bucks. I mean, sure, you are getting a curved monitor with a 144 Hz refresh rate, basic compatibility, convenient access to the settings via joystick, and no backlight bleed. But if you're planning on buying this just because it's one of the cheapest options on the list, then it's definitely worth considering the cons. Horrible color reproduction and vertical color shifting, we got limited port selection with lower refresh rate support, and the most important factor, the slower response times. Having a faster response time is just as important as having a higher refresh rate monitor, and for that reason, I would say it's better to pass on this monitor. Coming in at the halfway point is the Acer Nitro. This is a 24-inch IPS gaming monitor with a 144 Hz refresh rate and a 1 millisecond response time. This one is a bit more on the pricier side, coming in at $199. However, with that price tag, you can expect a better quality monitor, right? Let's find out. So to start off, I gotta say the design is very generic. I don't know why manufacturers still insist in going with this overused black and red color scheme. It's getting really annoying at this point. Adding non-neutral colors to any product ruins the chances of matching it with a specific color scheme. I know a lot of people watching this channel, myself included, like to build a setup with a specific color scheme. So having something that has red or blue or whatever accent colors can definitely throw off that aesthetic you're going for. The stand isn't even built that well. There's a lot of play. Luckily, it is VESA compatible, so I'd recommend mounting this to avoid using the cheap stand and get rid of the red accent colors. Accessing the menu, however, is a bit easier compared to the Sceptre monitor. It's a hybrid setup with a joystick and some buttons, but at least the options are labeled so you know exactly what you're pressing, and you can even use the joystick to navigate around. For connectivity, the monitor comes with 2 HDMI 2.0 ports and 1 DisplayPort, which are all able to push 144 Hz. However, they only provide you with an HDMI cable, which is kind of disappointing for this price point. I expected at least a DisplayPort cable as well. The Acer Nitro has an IPS panel like the Sceptre monitor, however the viewing angles on this one are far better since it is using a higher quality IPS panel. Very little to no color shifting present horizontally and vertically, making this suitable for a multi-monitor setup. Being an IPS display, I was surprised to see very little backlight bleed in the top right corner. However, I should point out that I also noticed a single dead pixel on the same spot as the backlight bleed. I always recommend anyone buying a brand new monitor to check for dead pixels as soon as possible. And the best way to do that is by going into your screensaver options and setting a black screensaver. The Acer monitor is also the brightest monitor on the list, measuring 366 nits of peak brightness, and it's also the most accurate panel as well, with 100% of sRGB coverage and 84% of Adobe RGB. When it comes to ghosting or corona artifacts, I was also pleasantly surprised to experience none of that. The Acer Nitro is proving to be an exceptional gaming monitor, which also explains the price. You are paying $200 for a solid gaming monitor that checks all the boxes. Fast response times, exceptional color reproduction, very little to no backlight bleed, and great viewing angles. Really, the only thing that I disliked about this monitor was the cheap stand, but a simple fix to that is by mounting a monitor. When it comes to the Acer Nitro, you are getting what you are paying for essentially. The Viotek GFV24C is also one of the cheapest monitors on the list, coming in at just $145. It's a 24-inch monitor with a 144 Hz VA panel. Aesthetically, I think it's a decent looking monitor with thin bezels all around and a modest chin, but I'm not a huge fan of the circular base design. It's also very flimsy. I noticed a lot of play both horizontally and vertically. However, to offset that, it is VESA compatible. The menu buttons are inconveniently located on the bottom of the display. However, it is at least labeled, making it somewhat easier to navigate around. However, I do want to point out that the amount of options and the lack of gamma controls were a bit disappointing. For connectivity, the monitor comes with 1 DisplayPort and 2 HDMI. However, the HDMI ports are both capped at 120 Hz. The only way to achieve 144 is through the provided DisplayPort cable. As I mentioned earlier, the monitor has a VA panel. However, there is a noticeable amount of color shifting vertically. One thing I haven't seen before on any of the monitors I've reviewed in the past is this backlight bleed outline alongside all 4 of the borders. It's not too obtrusive, but it's definitely there and might impact your viewing or gaming experience in low light. The Viotek monitor is one of the slowest on the list with a 4 millisecond response time, and with that comes ghosting. Lots of it. As expected, the monitor also has pretty terrible color reproduction, scoring only 95% of the sRGB color space and only 260 nits of peak brightness. But what's worse is that the colors are also really bad by default. Out of the box, it comes with this greenish tint or hue, which you can't do anything about. I tried to mess with the settings to find a fix to this, but sadly there isn't any. When you look at the Viotek monitor, it doesn't really check off any of the boxes from the list, other than being a 144 Hz panel. In fact, there isn't a huge difference between this one and the Pixio monitor, which is the other cheap option on the list, except this monitor isn't curved and has backlight bleed, whereas the Pixio doesn't. Really, the Viotek monitor is the worst out of the 2 worst monitors on this list, and it's better if you skip this one as well. The AOC monitor is actually my favorite monitor from this list. You get a 24-inch curved display with a VA panel, and it has a 165 Hz refresh rate with a 1 millisecond response time for $145. Again, I'm not a fan of the dark red accents on the bottom of the chin or on the base of the monitor, but I do have to say I'm pleasantly surprised with the build quality of the stand. Not to mention, it also offers height adjustability and swivel, which is not something you would see with this price point, and there's even a cutout in the neck piece to pass through cables. The option to mount the monitor is also there since it is VESA compatible. You just have to remove the neck piece to access the mounting holes. Navigating through the menu is a lot easier thanks to the labels on the chin. However, like I said earlier, I would have preferred a single joystick. For connectivity, the monitor has 1 DisplayPort, 2 HDMI, and a VGA for those who still live in the 1900s. However, all 3 of the ports, with the exception of the VGA, supports 144 Hz, and this is the only monitor in the list that provides both an HDMI and a DisplayPort cable, which is nice. The AOC monitor has one of the better VA panels from this list, with very little color shifting vertically. The monitor doesn't have the best color accuracy, but for a VA panel it did pretty good, especially compared to the other VA panels on the list. With a bit of color calibrating, you can get a more accurate panel if you need it for color sensitive work. So far, this monitor has proven to be a solid choice compared to the rest of them on the list. So why the $145 price tag? Taking a look at the ghosting test, it all becomes apparent. Not only does this monitor experience a lot of ghosting, but it also experiences corona artifacts as well. Corona artifacts, also known as inverse ghosting, happens when pixels overshoot their final color value before bouncing back. This leads me to believe that it doesn't have a 1 millisecond response time as advertised. The AOC monitor might not be the fastest monitor on the list, but it sure as hell checks all the other boxes and still makes a great choice for gamers looking to spend around $145. And finally, the last monitor on the list is the Sceptre E258B. It's a 25-inch, 165Hz monitor with a VA panel and a 1 millisecond advertised response time. Build quality is pretty good for the most part with slight play, but nothing really to complain about. I do like the minimalistic stand with the thin bezels, but something that turned me off were the location of the ports. They put them too close to the bottom, and as a result, you can see the cables from the front, and you can't do anything about them. I'm not sure why they didn't stick to the same horizontal port layout as the other Sceptre monitor, but hey, at least they were kind enough to label each port with the refresh rate support. So you'll be able to hit the 144 Hz with one of the HDMI ports. However, to achieve 165, you'll need to use the included DisplayPort cable. Accessing the menu is still as annoying as the other Sceptre monitor. It's just something you're gonna have to get used to, unfortunately. While the other Sceptre monitor has an IPS panel, this one has a VA panel, which explains why it's $10 cheaper. It does offer pretty good viewing angles horizontally, but it has the worst color shifting vertically compared to the rest of the monitors on the list. I would strongly avoid mounting this on the top as an overhead. The other Sceptre monitor also experienced a lot of bleeding due to its IPS panel, but this one doesn't. As expected, it doesn't have the same color reproduction as the IPS model. However, I was pleased to find no ghosting. It appears that Sceptre stays true to their marketing and doesn't false advertise like other companies. The E258B offers a lot for the money, and it's arguably one of the better choices for 165Hz gaming. So here is a breakdown of all the monitors I covered in this video, along with each of the pros and cons. And here is my ranking of each monitor from the best to worst. It's no surprise the Viotek is the worst one out of the bunch, as it doesn't offer anything to the table other than being a super cheap 144Hz monitor with VESA compatibility. In fact, you can get a much better monitor for about the same price if you pick up the AOC monitor, which also happens to have a higher 165Hz refresh rate. If you're okay with a slower response time and subpar color accuracy, then the AOC display will keep you satisfied while saving some moolah at the same time. If you have $200 in your pocket and don't mind spending it all on a monitor, then the Acer is the best choice from this list, as it offers all the important features that you are looking for in a solid gaming monitor. An IPS panel with great viewing angles, 100% sRGB coverage for color-sensitive work, and a fast 1 millisecond response time with no ghosting. Either of the Sceptre monitors are also a great choice if you really want that 165Hz refresh rate. However, I would choose the newer version because of the IPS panel. I'm a sucker for vibrant colors and viewing angles. If you guys found this video helpful, consider dropping a like before you head out, as it does help out the channel a ton. And if you're picking up any of the monitors in this list, let me know in the comment section which one and why. I'll also be doing a lot of these roundup style videos in the near future, so if there's one you guys want me to focus on for the next video, let me know in the comments section. It could be anything from keyboards, mice, headsets, even mouse pads, or even 1440p monitors. So whatever you guys are interested in seeing, let me know in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I love your beautiful faces, and I'll see you very soon in the next one.